Hello and welcome to this edition of Türkiye Talks. My name is Bora Bayraktar, and today we are going to talk about Turkish President Erdoğan's visit to United Arab Emirates. I am joined by Kadir Üstün from Washington and Professor Ahmet Uysal from Ankara. He's the head of Middle East Strategic Research Center, or SAM, in Ankara. Hello, welcome to the program.
Hello, Bora.
Hello, Bora. Nice to be with you.
Thank you very much, Uysal Hocam. I want to start with you actually because I know that you follow what's going on in Gulf region. You closely followed during the last couple of years, especially the conflict or competitive relationship between Turkey and UAE. When we look at the reactions of the meeting of the visit of Turkish president in international media, I noticed that especially in the Western media, most of the outlets underlined this visit as a trade relationship or underscoring Turkish and UAE reapproachment. What is your take on this? Do you think this was a real change in the Turkish-UAE relationship? What was the motive of Turkey and UAE, and what will be the scope of this reapproachment? I know this is a long question, and you will need some time to reply all of this. But let's start with your first impressions and your thoughts about it.
Yes, I think this is a different start or a significant change in the regional relations after the Arab Spring. Some Gulf countries like the UAE and Saudi Arabia, they stood against these Arab democratic aspirations, and they supported generally the coups in different places like Egypt, in Yemen, in Libya, and because of that, Turkey and their relations became sour. So after like 10 years, now we see a normalization, kind of coming to terms with each other, because nobody actually could win, but also those who try to change the changes or resist the changes, they realize this is taking too much of their energy. So they began to thought that we have to cooperate in different places like Libya, Eastern Mediterranean. Now the UAE is attacked by Houthis that are supported by Iran, and have some issues with Egypt because of the Ethiopia dam, and the UAE invested in Ethiopia a lot and did not allow or took sides with the Ethiopian government, and while maybe Egypt was supporting the Tigray movement. There are also problems in Yemen and also with Iran. So the UAE felt that they have to have some kind of a balance and also a friend in the region. So they began to cooperate. But Turkey extended its hand to three countries, three regional countries at the same time, to the UAE, to Saudi Arabia, and to Egypt. And the UAE held Turkey's hand very strongly, very eagerly. And Egypt held Turkey's hand, shook the hand, of course, didn't left it in the air, but a little bit timidly and more cautiously. So in the end, Saudi Arabia is still hesitant, but Turkey did not distinguish between these three different sides, and Turkey also believes in regional cooperation to solve regional problems. And as you know, the region has plenty of issues, crises, and problems. So regional cooperation is a must. And looks like other countries began to come to that point that nobody can win over the other, so it is better to cooperate. And the visit was very much paid attention in the Arab world. I am following that very closely, and especially inside the UAE. After before a couple of years ago, they were kind of very negative attitude toward Turkey. Now there is a welcome. Turkey. Erdoğan also attended Expo 2020 that was delayed due to Corona, and also big show of presence with businessmen, diplomats, etc. So I think it was a successful meeting that also was explained in the statements, official statements later on. So this is like a business plus politics plus kind of a normalization, calming down or toning down the discrepancies. So this maybe summary.
Yeah, Kadir, what do you think? Do you think there is a real sea change in relations? We have seen a very positive and warm welcome. The president of Turkey was received very warmly in UAE, and even we have seen, Turkish songs sang by very famous UAE singers. The tower was painted red and white. Turkish flag was on it. So it was a very interesting and strong show of acceptance to Turkey. What do you think? Do you think there is a real sea change, or this is just a trade scope of relation? What do you think? Do you think there is more behind that?
Bora, I do believe it's a turning point. I've also written about this a couple months ago when MBZ visited Turkey, in November, I believe. And several months prior to that, over the summer, I believe their foreign minister had visited Turkey already. So this is not, this has been in the works for a while. And the president's visit to the UAE, he spent there a night, 2 full days, and it was a very warm welcome. There were a lot of symbolic gestures, and I think that was to show that, it wasn't a forced kind of relationship. It was not, because either side needed each other for specific things, but a full-on normalization and broadening of cooperation between the two countries. There was a lot of emphasis on economic development. And as you know, this region is still suffering from either the effects of the civil wars or somewhat failed states in some places, or states that are fully completely dysfunctional, and that this region needs a lot of investment and economic activity and economic cooperation. I think that was underlined in a number of agreements signed between Turkey and the UAE. And, there was even an announcement that they would start talking free trade agreement. Turkey recently signed one with Ukraine as well. So I think in a post-conflict region, we are not fully, out of the woods in terms of conflicts. There's still a conflict in Syria, but we need a lot of economic development and investment in the region to serve as sort of stabilizing factors. And I think that was the core of the message coming out of the UAE visit of President Erdoğan. And as Professor Uysal mentioned, these countries were at odds during the Arab Spring and then in various conflict zones until recently. So this is a very important change. You are asking if it's a sea change. I believe so, largely because of that. Only maybe a couple of years ago, they were supporting opposing sides in different conflicts. But I think both sides realized that there's no strategic benefit from this kind of confrontation throughout the region, and there's more to be gained from economic cooperation, economic development in the region. And Turkey already stuck to its guns about supporting Qatar when the Gulf nations were uniting against Qatar, and they imposed an embargo. Turkey still has a good relationship with Qatar, and Qatar kind of made up at the beginning of the year, last year, with the rest of the Gulf nations. Turkey's relationship with the Saudis still remained somewhat cool, let's say. I think Turkey already did some messaging on that, and they hope some progress could happen there as well. But I think the regional actors, we've been discussing with you past several episodes of this, Türkiye Talks. I think the regional actors are starting to assume a lot more responsibility in an era where the United States or the Western powers are either unwilling or unable to invest and spend political capital or economic resources in the region, and they don't want to pay a lot of they don't want to do a lot of the heavy lifting. And it's only, I think, in my judgment, through the major players in the region that we can come to sort of lasting stability, lasting solutions for the region. So I see that as this visit especially as a reflection of that reality, that various actors in the region are recognizing that they need to talk to each other, they need to work together and cooperate more in a variety of areas.
Yeah, well, I'd like to add, before this meeting, we were talking about a couple months ago, maybe a year ago, a hostile relationship, but now we have seen a very sharp turn from both sides, which was enabled by the sympathy going on in Arab Street about Turkey and Erdoğan. I don't know if you agree. Even when Turkish UAE and Saudi relations were not good, I think President Erdoğan never lost sympathy in Arab Street, whatever happened. I think this also enabled both sides to make a clear and quick turn. So maybe this can also be added into this a quick change in relationship. I don't know if you agree, but I'd like to.
Bora,
yeah.
Sorry, I do agree with that. My usual standard question to you is the reaction in Turkey, right, by the Turkish public opinion, Turkish media. But if you want to turn to Professor Uysal, that's fine. But I'm going to ask you my standard question again, so maybe you can respond to that later.
Yeah. Very quickly, I think many people were surprised, have been surprised about this quick turn, especially the opposition in Turkey and, usual criticisms. But I think most people are happy because now Turkey is collecting the fruits of what have been done in the past few years, especially in the field of security in and around Turkey. So I'm going to maybe continue to that. But I'd like to ask Professor Uysal, what will be the outcomes or consequences of this visit? What should we expect, for example, in Libya? Do you think now Turkey and UAE will be cooperating, or just they will limit their competition between each other? What do you think, especially when it comes to Libya and Syria and other problematic countries in the region?
I think it's going to have a major impact between the bilateral relation, between the UAE and Turkey. It is now, what is interesting is that they began to talk. That's a good thing. And so after talking more detail, maybe they can realize they can have common interest. They can live together, or they can kind of adopt a more reconciliatory approach toward each other. It was before, especially with the Arab Spring, as I said, and the UAE, sometime they entered this ideological stance toward Turkey, considering Turkey as like a Muslim brotherhood. This wasn't true, but they acted like that. So when they began to talk, I think they can agree on many issues. Turkey is still a secular country, even though people are, pious and religious. But Turkey is also open to the world, and the UAE also wants to be open to the world, and they all also want to connect to Europe through Turkey. So there is room for general discussion and agreement, and also some of the crises are kind of maybe I see it. The UAE is pushed into these crises, like in Libya, supporting Sisi, and Yemen, for example. All these, I think, are bigger than one country, not only the UAE, considering it's a little bit small-sized country, but also all these conflicts are too big to handle for anybody, for America, for Russia, for Turkey. So they began to realize, there is no permanent alliance, permanent friendship, especially when they fell maybe at opposite sides with Egypt, and in Yemen with Saudi Arabia, and a little bit maybe understanding with Saudi Arabia upset it Houthis, and now Houthis are attacking them. So they have issues in the region, and they cannot solve it so quickly. And they are also not on the winning, especially after the Qatar embargo. With the Saudi Arabia, they lost. Also, to bring Haftar to power in Libya, they also lost, and they also met with the hard power by Turkey, supporting the Accord government, Sarraj government, and still supporting the legitimate government. But now the question that you are asking also very relevant, because now Turkey and Emirates, they look like they are supporting the Baby, the current Accord government, verified by Libyan committee and also committees, 75 people, and then by the UN also. But at the same time, Egypt and France are provoking Bash Agha to be a prime minister or to lead the country in cooperation with Aguila Saleh, who is very close to Egypt, and Haftar also. He's playing with France and the UAE, but I see this time the UAE is not as committed to Haftar. He's also a losing horse in the country. Nobody wants him, but he has the army and weapons, so he's still forcing himself by his sons also, but by foreign support. So there is, I think, also lack of unity in the pro-coup camp or anti-democratic camp in Libya. So I think this gives a chance for Turkey to maneuver, to negotiate, to maybe stabilize, because the UAE also invested a lot and spent a lot of money. They want to get it as quickly as a payback, and Libya need to be stable for this purpose. You need to be producing oil and gas. Also, UAE is a investor country, investing in a lot of countries with the infrastructure, especially with sea trade, I mean logistics and naval trade. So they are very much interested in this, and they want to stabilize maybe Libya this time, and we'll see. But there is room for a lot of discussion with Turkey, maybe also a cooperation. So the situation changed from the past year around or a couple of years ago.
Yeah, some people in Turkey, don't get what's really going on. Actually, Kadir, I'm trying to answering your question. Because of the very polarized political situation in Turkey, this act of the government, this act of president, is being portrayed as, Turkey lost its direction in diplomacy. It's not clear. They were our enemy. What happened, and now why we are talking to these UAE? This is the rhetoric, narrative, which was sold, especially in the opposition media. But when it comes to Turkey's foreign policy and security establishment, I think most people are supporting what's going on, and we have seen more in-depth analysis. After Turkey's successes in Karabakh, in Libya, in other places, also with the change in the Biden, in the American administration, with the Biden government, they are talking to Iran, and they have different approach to Middle East. So this also played role. This is also being told in Turkish media. So these narratives are in competition right now, but I think in general, people seem content what's going on, because now Turkey is talking and meant ties with these countries, and now they are changing their hostile attitude, and they are looking for more cooperation. And I think this is important. I want to ask you, how do you see this change? Ahmet Hoca explained, this is not only limited with UAE, more countries, Saudis are in line. Do you think there will be a spillover in this reapproachment politics in the region? Do you think Turkey and Saudis are also, they can also find a common ground? What do you think about it?
Well, I just want to comment on something you said earlier about the Turkey-UAE relationship. The disagreements or the confrontation was never direct. It was through the regional issues, regional events like Libya, like the embargo against Qatar, and in an environment where Qatar conducted a strong diplomacy over the years, and it got a lot of help from Turkey. If it weren't for Turkey, I think Qatar would have been in a much more dire situation, that's for sure. But they also pursued a diplomatic approach, reaching out to everyone, and they didn't go the route of confrontation with their Gulf neighbors. And it succeeded. After about 2 years of that, they finally made up with the UAE. So that strong disagreement, which was indirect for Turkey, was removed already. So it wasn't like Turkey and UAE had disagreements, but over the regional issues, not on bilateral level. It's not like so that was one important thing. And the UAE's posture in Yemen, for instance, has changed also. That was partly because the U.S. pressure, U.S. public opinion, media talked a lot about the humanitarian suffering in Yemen. Biden talked about it in clear terms. They threatened to, stop arms exports to Saudi or others that would be used in Yemen. So those kinds of pressures were critical. And then, like Professor Uysal mentioned, in Libya, Turkey basically balanced the Haftar forces and supported the UN-recognized government, created a new balance which was not going to be tipped against Turkey unless Turkey decided to pull its troops and reduced its footprint. Even, some Russian groups there had to kind of take a step back. So Turkey created a new balance of power inside Libya. So it's not like, others had a lot of choice but to talk to Turkey and negotiate with Turkey. So my point is, Turkey's issues with the UAE was not direct on all issues. There was, of course, a lot of talk in Turkey about, potential role of the UAE in the coup attempt of 2016. Some parts of the media talked about this a lot in strong terms, and so UAE may have, or at least some figures in the UAE may have played the role, but we don't ultimately know that for sure, or like it hasn't been as publicized, as transparent. These things are, as we know who tried to do the coup, but who supported them is harder to judge or harder to know for sure as analysts. Of course, the governments might have a better idea about that. So overall, I would say Turkey and the UAE looked at the regional situation, as I said earlier, and the US administration is trying to make a deal with Iran. Other than that, they're not interested in creating new initiatives in the region. They're not even interested in the peace process between Israel and Palestine, etc. So the regional actors have recognized that they need to talk to each other, and that's happening. President Erdoğan mentioned Israel's, going for full normalization with Israel as well. Israeli president is supposed to come to Turkey at the beginning of March. So this is not a one-time, one-shot thing with the UAE, but it's a broader approach. I believe that, Turkey is saying, okay, we need a new sort of way of doing business in this region. We need to reduce the tensions and cooperate more. Ahmet Hocam, I wanted to ask you about, you follow the Arab world really well. And what do they feel? How do they feel about the potential, agreement with Iran? I don't want to go through all the details of that, but we know what happened in the past. U.S. pulled out, and now trying to get a new agreement, and Iran's posture is different now, etc. But the Gulf nations were very, very worried about that, and they tried to push the U.S. several times, along with Israel, to apply much bigger pressure on Iran and potentially even try to take out the nuclear program. How do they see it now? What is your assessment today? How they look at Iran?
Yes, Dr. Kadir, thank you for the question. Very significant question, because both Iran and Biden are two sources of worries in the Gulf region. The Biden talking to Iran and reviving the nuclear deal, and the concessions Obama gave to Iran, especially at the expense of Arabs in Syria, in Yemen, also Iran, as you can imagine, entered with the kind of blink or kind of green light, or almost like a green light from America, and this is worrying. And they were happy with Trump, and Biden came to power again, kind of leaving the traditional allies, which are Turkey, Saudi Arabia, the Gulf region, and Israel. And now Biden has cool relations with these traditional allies, and they feel the heat, they feel the pressure, both from Iran, but also from American exit from Afghanistan, and the talks that they might even get out of the Gulf region, because America doesn't need Arab oil and gas anymore. and the Europeans needed, of course, and American business make a lot of money from this oil and gas, but it's not as crucial as before. But and this is a major thing. Afghanistan pullout also a big question, as I mentioned. But at the same time, Iran is attacking them. Yeah, that's worrying because, as you remember, after maybe a couple of years ago, Houthis attacked. They said the Houthis. I don't know if it is Iran directly attacking the Saudi Arabia and today the UAE, but there is attacks for sure, and these are hurting these Gulf countries, and they don't have armies. They depend on American defense. But if America made a deal and they sell them off, they feel these worries. And as suddenly or surprisingly America exited from Afghanistan, they are worried that they might also leave them. America, the US would leave them. That's the worries. But Iran is attacking this time the UAE. This is the novelty that may be explaining why the UAE is now trying to cooperate with Turkey, because Iran traditionally also for a long time, Iranian companies, offshore companies, and also joint companies, they operated in the UAE and made a lot of money together. And they kind of loosened embargo on Iran through the UAE. Now looks like this partnership is over, and there is kind of a tension, and they attacked the airport and some security facilities and trade facilities. Let's not forget the UAE is an oil country, true, but now trying to focus on tourism and trade also a lot more. So these attacks hurting the country, one thing, but also the image. You know, they were depending on, at least before the corona, they were depending on luxury tourism, and which brings a lot of rich people, and any kind of small worries about insecurity, terror, or attacks, this can discourage them, scare them off, and the UAE is suffering from these attacks a lot, and looks like also the trust or kind of a benign understanding with Iran also disappeared. So you can sense the source of or the sense of insecurity in the Gulf region, and they don't no country, I can say, are happy about the Iranian deal. They want Iran to be tamed, but they bet on Obama. I mean, they bet on Trump attitude toward Iran, but also Trump fell short to stop Iran or attack Iran. But Biden is very soft on Iran, and this is worrying for them. So the nuclear deal is, or the negotiations overall, doesn't appeal, doesn't make the Gulf countries happy. Maybe the least would be Oman. They have traditional good relations with Iran, but they might be even not so happy about that, because Iran is a big country. If they are strong with this today's current perspective, which is more ambitious and more assertive toward the region, I think almost all countries would be worried about the Iranian kind of loosening, and things are getting better. They don't like it.
Another very quick question, Bora. This, Biden's announcement of Qatar as a major non-NATO ally, how was that received in the region?
That's another issue now, especially when you look at the Saudi Arabia. They invested in Trump so much. They bought a lot of weapons, or they spent this money. I'm not sure if it is weapons, but they say it is for weapons. And it is a huge chunk of money. It's $450 billion were given to Trump to make sure that they feel safe, and America is with them. and they at the same time they apply the embargo or siege against Qatar. They want to suffocate and also make him surrender to the big brothers, which is Saudi Arabia and Emirates. And of course, after the Trump exit and Biden coming to power now, of course, Turkey's support, which is one reason also I think they want to rethink the Turkey approach, because Turkey's friends are winning. Turkey is also remaining strong. Made them or helped them to rethink about Turkey's policy. But at the end, the question is very relevant. They are the one who spent for this glory in a way or success, and they failed to make Qatar surrender or come after them, follow them. I mean, and now Qatar's star is more shiny. And in Afghanistan, in Palestine, with relations with America, and America announced it's like a very strategic ally, non-NATO ally, most valuable non-NATO ally. Very kind of I kind of sense the jealousy. I mean, we are paying the price to America, and now Qatar is enjoying the glory, in their opinion. Wouldn't look nice on them. But also the same with the Erdoğan visit to the UAE. We said Turkey doesn't sell its allies and friends, and this is not against Qatar. Qatar should be also relaxed and happy about the overall cooperation in the region. I mean, it's happiness is. Happiness can grow when you share. So if you share the wealth and share the happiness or friendship, we can. This doesn't, take away from the others. But the question is very relevant. They should be, the picture didn't please the ones who paid the big money to America. I mean, Trump didn't put them in his pocket. It's American companies and American arms sectors that are profiting, but they are not even appreciated. That's the sad part for Saudi Arabia and the UAE. So they should be kind of worried about that.
Hocam, can we also say that, we talk about Iran as a threat for Gulf countries? I think the security of Gulf and Eastern Mediterranean is interlinked these days. On the one hand, security of Gulf countries against Iran, and Israel is also very concerned about Iranian attitude. But also, I want to bring two other actors in the region, Russia and China. They are also investing this region, and they are in competition with Western countries, especially the US, EU are very concerned about Chinese and Russian existence in the region. So do you think...
Before you get into this, I just want to add one small thing that is also making Turkey look strong, is the kind of relative failure of this deal of the century. The Arab countries would be, embracing Israel, would be like happy and happy neighborhood, all peace and all these talks. Trump gave them, empty check or blank check to do what, to give Israel a blank check to write anything they like. But this didn't go through as much as they like. The official naming and everybody becoming normalizing with Israel is not the case. Some countries, of course, normalized, but they didn't get the benefit from that. And there's another failure that this pro or anti-democracy camp, let's say, are facing. So this makes Turkey look stronger in this. But other actors also are, if you want to complete your question, the other actors are also very important in the struggle in the region. Yes.
Yeah. I was just going to ask, Turkey's performance in Syria, in Karabakh, in Libya. Do you think? What is your impression in Arab media? Do you think that Turkey is regarded as an actor who can provide stability, who can help this security issue between the Gulf and the Eastern Mediterranean? Do you think Turkey is the link to this security problem in the region? Do you think Arabs see Turkey as the stabilizing actor, as Turkish president of communication? He wrote a book about that. Turkey is a stabilizing power. Do you think this view is shared by Arab countries? This is my last question.
Yes, definitely. I see that it is shared by the Arab public opinion. There is, several polls proving that, and Turkey's stance comes out very strong in this, and sympathy for Turkey's approach. Plus, Turkey also has proved that can make a difference, can defend itself, can defend its allies. Also, with its drone technology, especially, can change the games. So it is. So they have to consider Turkey in any case. If you are a friend or a foe, or maybe a bystander. So this is the message. Sometimes these governments, when they attacked Turkey previously, they exaggerated their criticism. Sometimes it is like a negative commercial. And as you know, there is no negative commercials, even though when you criticize, you make this name bigger. So they realize Turkey is there. It is you can depend on Turkey as an ally, as a friend, and doesn't leave their friends. So this gives also second thought to the leaders in the Arab countries, like. We've seen it definitely with the UAE, but we began to see it with maybe Egypt, and I think also Saudis will come on board, because Turkey didn't attack Saudi Arabia. They were the one who killed Khashoggi in Turkish territories, but they should be showing signs of goodwill, and we see some of them. Like the undeclared embargo toward Turkish goods in Saudi Arabia, they said this is over. They canceled that, and they said this is like a civilian embargo, civilian campaign. Of course, nobody believed that, but at the end, this campaign is over. So there are signs that Saudi Arabia also want to cooperate with Turkey in a better way, but. Of course, this scene is more complicated with the Khashoggi murder and its political implications. Or will Erdoğan shake hands or come, next to Mohammed bin Salman under these pressures? It's a big question, of course.
Bora, I just realized you asked me that question. I never answered it. I pretty much agree with Professor Uysal. It's a harder case to.
He pulled me into trap. Yeah, he made me answer.
No, I just realized I hadn't responded to Bora's question, but it's a harder thing to do, especially Mohammed bin Salman had put in a lot of energy and resources into making a big splash about his vision to 20 his big sort of, he's trying to diversify the economy. All Gulf countries, they are trying to diversify their economies away from just oil and gas, which is very, very hard to do. And in the middle of that, Khashoggi event happened, and it happened on Turkish soil, and Turkey responded in a way that I think they didn't expect, but they should have, because Turkey is a serious country with institutions. anyway, but I think there is, they do need to cooperate in this new regional environment, but it's gonna probably take more time because of that, because of the Khashoggi incident.
Okay, with this, we came to the end of this show. Thank you, Kadir, and thank you, Mr. Uysal. Professor Ahmet Uysal is the head of ORSAM, a very important research center on Middle East in Turkey, based in Ankara. Thank you, Hocam, and thank you, Kadir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hocam, for joining us. Thank you, Bora.
Thank you, both of you.
See you next time. Bye-bye.
Nice discussion. See you.